Join host Charisma Eve on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and unapologetic authenticity. In each episode, Charisma dives deep into conversations, exploring what it truly means to embrace oneself fully and live life with genuine charisma. From personal antidotes to interviews, Unapologetically Me is a space where vulnerability meets strength, where listeners are encouraged to celebrate their uniqueness and step into their power without reservation. Tune in for inspiring stories, practical tips, and a dose of unfiltered wisdom as Charisma Eve guides you towards embracing your most authentic self. It's time to own your truth and live unapologetically. And now your host, Charisma Eve.
Good afternoon and welcome to all of our wonderful listeners out there. Welcome to Unapologetically Me. I am Charisma Eve. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming to see about little old me over here at Unapologetically Me. And we're always so glad, so happy to welcome our listeners. We try to make sure that we have something good for you to listen to, something educational, something that's going to tilt your ears. And this evening, we want to welcome a very, very, very dear friend, I say, my brother, Mr. Gerald McGee. He is a longtime friend of mine, but rather than say friend, I'd rather say more of a brother. And I want to welcome him to Unapologetically Me. And I want to tell you a little bit about him. We've known each other for well over 30 years. And we both are. I know him because his father actually married my husband and I 37 years ago. Wow. In Salisbury. And he's been a part of my life as well. He and his sister from Salisbury, North Carolina. And but this gentleman here, I have so much respect for him because he is I want to make sure that I get it right. He is a therapist and from Ohio. Very, very, very intelligent brother. And he is going to talk to us this evening about perspective. We talked over the weekend about how we see things in life from different perspectives. And I want to welcome him to Unapologetically Me. And I'm going to unleash him to you and let him tell you about what we want to, what we've talked about. You know, he has just gotten back. He and his wife just got back from a wonderful trip in Mexico, and we talked about that. But he has even more to add to how we see things from a different perspective. From that, thought process, and just so many things that he has to add. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about you, Gerald.
All right, thank you. Andrea, sister, so glad. First, let me say I'm so glad to be here with you this evening, this day, discussing life and living and experience it and being in a healthy place. I think is such a critical thing, especially in the time we live in, where there's so many things to be stressed out about. But with perspective, we may realize, is it really as bad as we think it is? Or is it that we get so much information, there's so much dialogue, and being human, we're hyper vigilant and we're always seeking out the things that we think are danger. And when people around us are always telling us, something wrong, something's bad, then we get stuck in that place in our mind, and we're constantly looking for the crap to hit the fan, because we are wired to seek out fears and dangers. And the world we live in now is designed to always present us with the most dangerous, most distorted perspective. So if we don't have the right mental, spiritual, and emotional and physical perspectives and coping strategies and problem solving strategies, we're going to get caught up in a place where we're going to have a lot of anxiety and a lot of sleepless nights. So with that being said, you know, I'm a father of five. Love being a dad. All my kids. A wonderful wife. Yes, we were just out of the country celebrating, and that was great. Um, I've been a clinical therapist for over 15 years now, and I've been working in social services and working with people for over 20, I would say over 25 years. I have my own practice, Everyday People Individual and Family Counseling Center, located in Euclid, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland. And I've had that practice since 2012. And excitingly, this month, I'm moving into a new office. I love it. Big windows, speaking of changing perspective, with a lot of green trees behind it. Um, a kitchenette, my own bathroom. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to be stingy because I might be like, no, you're not using my bathroom. There's a bathroom down the hallway you can use, but you're not using mine. Go use their toilet tissue. You're not using mine. So I'm really excited about that. And I have my own podcast. Therapy is Life. And we just been picked up by Revolt. So excited about that. And we've been putting out some good stuff here recently on men and men emotions and men's emotions. And I think that's doing pretty well. So we feeling really blessed. And if I had to starting off this conversation and taking a little farther, thinking about perspective, Andrea, keep it real. I mean, how do you see perspective? How would you define this perspective?
How would I define perspective? Well, now, when we were talking this weekend and you left me with this thought when you talked about the room and being in one part of the room and being in one corner of the room, you see things from one perspective. And being that if the Lord allows me to see Christmas Eve, I'll be 59. And, my dad being a minister, I've been raised to see things from one perspective. Okay. You grow up and you see things from different perspectives. You see things from a biblical perspective. You see things from a woman's perspective. You see things from a African American perspective. So you see things from several perspectives. But then when you mentioned to me coming to the middle of the room, I have marinated over that thing since we spoke on Saturday or Sunday, whenever that was. That made me think. Because you have to be more open-minded. And everybody is not open-minded. And I'm glad that I have, first of all, the mind to be open-minded, because everybody does not have that mindset. Exactly. I'm glad that even though I was raised in a certain religious background, that I'm open-minded enough that I can go anywhere to any place of worship, and my perspective does not have to be the right, quote unquote, perspective for
Gotcha.
everybody.
Gotcha.
You know,
Gotcha. Yeah.
I can be open minded enough to say, well, hey, I can, I mean, and I have been. I have gone to other places to sing,
Right.
and you know, and have been open minded enough to accept other people's reality was not my reality or was not my perspective, and that was okay. And I'm
Gotcha.
good with that. You understand? So
Mhm.
I'm glad that I'm big girl enough that I get it.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah. So I got you. And you know what? I want to say the first thing I want to say about perspective, it is something that is based on one's point of view, and it's been instilled over time based on our physical life experience, our emotional experience, our the core values and beliefs that we've been taught, and of
mhm,
course our social and political environment. It creates a perspective, and in those perspectives we create different values and beliefs, and those values and beliefs, they're the lens in which we see the world. Our perspective is a lens in which we've been given to see the world. And I use the word given because when we come into the world, we don't really have a perspective. There might be some things that are genetically in us,
mhm,
innately in us, like the need to eat and to need to communicate on some level that we are under distress, babies cry, um, the need to be concerned about danger, to some level, the need to be physically aggressive, the need to be
mhm,
empathetic. These things are innately in us on some level, and we might call those things instinctive things. But perspective requires an experience with people, an experience with an environment, and and it shapes us. And so when we think about perspective, we think about being a human being. Our when we talked about the being in the corner versus being in the center of the room, the way we've been taught, the way we've been nurtured, the way we've been cultivated, will help us in some way or another create a certain perspective. And you ever heard somebody use the word ethnocentrism?
mhm,
And so that word thinking your way is the only way. Well, oftentimes we will see our perspective and have some level of thought or belief that it is like the right way or the only way to be
right,
our perspective. And typically with perspective, when we talk about going to the center of the room, in order for us to change our perspective, we must be first willing to see other perspectives. So we must be
right.
open, and then there must be some knowledge and information given that helps us to change our way of thinking about what's in front of us. But if we're not willing to change, then we won't change. It's like the old statement, philosophy from philosophy. I think it might have been said by uh, one of the old Greek philosophers that you can lead a horse to the well, but you can't make him drink. So the ability to change perspective requires
Mhm,
openness to the possibility that there's something different than what I currently understand. That all that I know is still not all that is known. Maybe believing that as much as I think I know, I realize I don't know that much. However, a perspective that's really rigid is one that comes from a place I think I know everything. I got this, and you know, there's no more for me to know or to understand. So anything that doesn't sound like something that's agreeable to where I come from is not of value. It's not important. It's wrong, and it's wrong. And so to be Chinese is wrong. To be Brazilian is wrong. To be Pentecostal versus Catholic You know, there's wrong is there to be to like socialism versus the democracy is innately wrong. When we have those kind of perspectives, to be black is wrong, or to be black is right, and to be white is wrong. There's innately something wrong with that, and I'm sitting in my corner, not coming to the center of the room to try to be open to other perspectives. And the challenge with that is it limits our ability to grow because we can't see other perspectives.
And we had that conversation. I didn't realize just how much my my thought process was open, you know, and then it's like a pod, and you are like a pod, and then those that are around you become like pods, you know, if you allow them to, or if they allow themselves to, I guess I should say. Because and I can use a podcast more or less, because a lot of my students have reached out to me from this podcast that I've had in the past, because they're doing things. And you know, I was the center. I was the person that had the perspective that was in the corner. Now I've come to the center of the room. And by me coming to the center of the room and them seeing me in the center of the room, they're like, hey, there's Miss Stinson. And now they've grown, and they want to do other things, or they're seeing that I've grown and I'm doing other things and they're doing other things. And, you know, it's like growth.
Right.
I mean, I know I'm mumbling, but maybe I'm making sense.
Right.
But I don't have any questions.
Okay,
no.
Good. Because I want to say this, and I want to kind of break it down into smaller parts in a broader sense. You know, we're talking about being, you know, out of the, you know, being away from here and being around other people. You know, I'm kind of like always one of those kind of real personal people. I don't really talk about my like personal experiences, so I'll talk about it on some degree, but without giving a lot of specifics. But the meat is the message. You know, number one, perspectives. You know, growing up in America, you know, you oftentimes learn that you oftentimes hear a spin where what happened to the Mayan people, like they were gone. In my experience, what I learned was, oh no, they're Mayan people all around, and they're very active, and they're really, really involved, and they have villages, and they do, and they're very engaged in life and passing down their traditions. Their kingdom lasted for over 3,000 years. Over 3,000 years before the conquistadors came in, and they were conquered by them, and those people didn't disappear. They adapted their life to exist in a Spanish controlled environment, but they still held on to many of their cultural identity and beliefs and attitudes. Well, so now that changed my perspective on how I saw Mayan people. And many of the things, I remember many things I heard about them, and maybe on some level it was my naiveness, and I realized the importance to always research things that you hear. Even when things are presented very well, research them, because you'll find out more information and realize that, you know, you didn't have the right information. But that just goes to show you. Go ahead.
I will say this, so that people don't get lost about the conversation that you and I had over the weekend. Now I see what you're talking about. When we were talking about the Mayan people. Okay. So I didn't know who the Mayan people were. Maybe our listeners may need to chime in on who are the Mayan people. That might be the question that you might need to answer, because I didn't know who the Mayan people were. So they might need to know. Who the Mayan people?
Mayan people were indigenous to Mexico and perhaps maybe even other parts of Central America, but they had an empire that they had an empire that lasts over 3,000 years. They are known for their early on, I would say, use of science and math to build pyramids, create very organized societies, and much of which many of their philosophies and ideas we may use every day and not even realize it.
Oh wow!
So I remember when the man said something I thought was quite interesting. He said that God forgives, but time does not. And I was like, wow, that's powerful. Such a poignant statement, that we don't have much time. And then the idea of energy and how we have energy transference, and that's such a conversation now, transferring negative energy and explaining how they use the lava rocks, how they cut and they design lava rocks using tools that we wouldn't use now. They were able to carve and design these magnificent lava rocks, but many of them were used in their ceremony, and they believed it transferred energy. And we talk about those kind of things now, but these are things they were doing like 3,000 years ago. And so we don't know much about them. We don't hear much about the Mayans and their traditions and beliefs, but they're out there. But that changed my perspective. It helped me realize there's something I don't know. There's more information I don't know, not just about them, but other civilizations and their connectedness, and how they're connected to the Egyptians, and how they may have been connected to the Chinese, and all these early world civilizations that we have very, very limited information about and what they were able to do. But the more you learn, it opens up your perspective and gets you to realize that we think we know more than we actually do. So we need to be open, because a lot of times the greatest barrier in the human experience is lost in our interpretation because of our own individual perspective.
So the more closed-minded we are, the less we learn, whether it be about the Mayan people or any people.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, the idea of being closed-minded is a complex discussion, because being human, having the issues of being human, oftentimes we don't realize that we're being closed. We're conditioned to think and act certain ways, and we do that in belief that we are right. Remember, one of the first things I said is our early family life experience may teach us to be or act a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the experience from our childhood or our family, and those practices, whether healthy or unhealthy, can become functional for us, and we operate in it. So we think that what we're hearing and thinking is where we should be at. And so it naturally makes us somewhat biased. Human beings, it's instinctively in us to be biased in a certain way. So things that we're not familiar with, we're gonna shy from, because so you've been eating certain foods your whole life, right?
Right.
Okay. So I come and offer you a Mayan dish, or I come and offer you something Mediterranean you never ate before. You might be uncomfortable eating that because that's not familiar to you.
Right.
So when human beings lived in caves, I mean, they had an idea about they once they found the cave, they identified, they saw it as being safe. By a certain time, you had to be in that cave, and if you wasn't in that cave, there was consequences for it. And once you learn to eat a certain thing or behave in a certain way, you did it because you believe it was vital for saving your life. Then you continue in that practice because you believed it made you safe.
And that was your perspective.
That was your perspective. So when you come across, so watch this, when you come across somebody who's different from you, somebody who's a different color, somebody who's a different, have different values and beliefs, their ideas are different from yours. So naturally, there's some bias, there's some resistance to embrace it as being having equity with your experience or being of equal of being equal to yours because you feel like where you are and what you do and how you do it is a safe way of being. So you don't really question it so much unless your experience have allowed you to be open and to other ideas and perspectives. Or maybe there was something internal that where you had questions about why things were the way they were that drove you. You'll probably be stuck in this. I like to call this perspective, this closed perspective, and 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 um and walking that path every day. So then there's the closed perspective, which keeps people, I would say, which keeps people not only from engaging the world and learning about different ideas, but what's even worse about that, it keeps us from being able to grow and become the best versions of ourselves. Because with perspective about the world, the internal dialogue, my internal perspective, is more important than the perspective I have about the world because my internal dialogue gives value to who I am as a person, and it speaks to my capabilities and abilities to overcome the things that are put in front of me. My internal dialogue. So oftentimes I like to ask people, what is your internal dialogue? What do you say about yourself? Because if my self dialogue says that I'm lovable, if it says that I'm worthy, if it says that I am acceptable, if it says that I'm kind, if it says that I'm friendly, if it says that I am capable, able, if it says those things, when other people or things come up in my life that where I'm challenged or questions, my thought process is more likely to be, well, I'm capable, but this is difficult. This is hard, but I can do it. If my thought process is more, my perspective is more like I'm not lovable, I'm not capable, then my thought process is, well, I probably won't get this right. I probably won't be able to accomplish this.
Right.
And if that happens, then that's already affected my ability to be successful because my thought process has been challenged in a way, and I don't see the challenge as I heard this one time. There's no obstacles, there's only challenges. So it's one thing to be challenged and be up for it, and it's another thing to see this as an obstacle that I can't. My perspective creates an obstacle that I can't see through. So some people can imagine being I want people to be able to imagine anything they want to be. But some people, because of their internal perspective, will never be able to accomplish their dreams and goals because they can't get out of their own perspective. They can't get out of their own negative internal dialogue. This self-perspective that keeps them from being able to even perceive that they actually can accomplish the thing that they want to accomplish. So as soon as they go up against the obstacle, they back down. As soon as they come up with a challenge, they back down. Versus realizing that life always comes with thorns and thistles. There's always pushback and resistance. So this is all a part of the journey and becoming who I'm meant to become, to be to having the destiny I want to have. So I think I tell people every day to examine yourself and question your internal dialogue. What are you saying about yourself? Forget about what other people are saying about you. What are you saying about yourself? Because when you change the internal dialogue you have about you, the dialogue of other people is less significant.
That's really powerful. I needed to hear that.
It becomes less significant. I mean, and I know it's challenging for many of us because probably in school, many of us have been told we wasn't that smart. It wasn't that capable. Maybe you just had a different way of learning. Maybe you had different skill sets that didn't necessarily manifest itself in a typical education, but because they told you you wasn't that smart, or you needed some special education, then you developed this self concept issue that you dealt with your whole life, or you wasn't the greatest writer, or wasn't the greatest math person, or whatever you had challenges with, or you had some job you didn't do that well with, or whatever, or you had a parent who had substance abuse problems and they wasn't emotionally supportive, or they had other issues where they wasn't there for you, and so you feel like you had to walk in this journey all by yourself. But the reality of it is, your parents, or whatever their condition or situation was, they were struggling with something, and that limited their ability, or their own perspective was limited, so that hindered their ability to be the parent you thought they should have been. But there's a catch to that. Parents are human and have limitations, and sometimes in the ideal world we hear about how our parents should be, or how children should, and when people don't come up to that, then we hold on to this limiting limiting narrative, and say, well, because something wasn't this way, or something that wasn't that way, it messes with our perspective. So then we see ourselves as being handicapped, or disabled, because a certain person didn't do a certain thing. But when you realize that all humans have the issues of being human, and that we all have limitations, I understand that my parents' challenge did not create an environment where I could not be my best version of myself. My journey might just be different from somebody else's.
Right.
But if I hold on to that narrative, and I internalize it like I'm not worth anything, well, that narrative is going to be the larger larger devil keeping me from getting where I'm trying to go, and not that experience. Because we can look at people, and we can go across many different experiences. And as a therapist, I see this every day. People have different backgrounds, and many people having different experiences. The only thing that really makes them different is their interpretation of their experience.
And you find yourself over time, I'm listening, and we're going to get ready to go, but you find yourself over time manifesting those things, or those words, into life, into what you perpetuate throughout the rest of your life as you grow up. And I'm saying that, I'm going to say this, and then we're going to get ready to go. But I remember in the 6th grade, my 6th grade teacher called me scatterbrain. She called me scatterbrain. And I don't remember why she called me that. I just remember her calling me that. And I remember my mother she went up to the school, and you know how soft my mother was. But can you picture my mother wanting to go up to the school and jump on this woman because she called me that? But here I find myself wanting to, I'm like, why would she call me scatterbrain? What's wrong with my brain? And I found myself, for the remainder of my school time, perpetuating being scatterbrain because of the words. Words have power. And those words that she spoke into my life, although I knew I was smart, but she called me scatterbrain, and I found myself trying to figure out what that meant. What did she mean? What did it mean about me that I was scatterbrain? But we're gonna have to finish this conversation. Yes. This is really good. This is really good. But Gerald, you gotta come back. You gotta come back.
Yes, we'll do that. We can do that.
Yes, you've got to come back, and we've got to finish this up, because perspective has a lot to do with how we see life in general. Exactly. And it doesn't start. It starts with how we see life from a child, but it doesn't finish with that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. We can change our perspective.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But listen, folks, we have enjoyed this conversation with Brother Gerald McGee here at Unapologetically Me, and we want to thank him for coming to visit with us today.
Most definitely.
And we want to say we welcome him at any time to come back and visit with us. This is audio, but like I tell everybody, we're looking at some point to come back and do video. So you are more than welcome to come back and visit with us here. We love it. We
got to finish up the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gerald. We appreciate it. And,
thank you.
Live, love, laugh, love yourself. And with this, we're going to say, have a good evening, have a good day, love yourself, and thank you guys. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining Unapologetically Me, Charisma Eve. Please like, share, and subscribe, and join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for another exciting episode wherever you listen to your podcast.